Start recording. All right, I'm going to let it rest for a minute. Hopefully you all have WebEx running right now, because this thing is just not going to stay on. I apologize. I'll try to turn it back on periodically as we go, but I guess it's the bulb. Okay, so what we're going to start with is...
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
So I'm going to go ahead and save that just so we have it. I'm going to go back to the version of this before we had any of that facial animation on it, right? So file, open scene. For me, that was, I can tell by the date, it was 13, or number 12 there. And so it'll take it a couple of minutes to load. Give it a minute to... Oh. While this file is loading, I'm going to go ahead and pass around the attendance sheet. Almost got it. Okay. So there's a couple of different things we're going to do to start prepping for this, right? Or before we get started, let's talk about the fact you're all probably pretty comfortable with already, which is the fact that...
Okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
Hearing this over and 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 over gets very annoying, right?
I've been doing it since I was 19.
You kind of have to get over that. Eventually we're going to just be hearing this as, eventually you're just going to be hearing this as sounds, and you will remember like every syllable of this for a long time. I can quote entire sentences in other languages just because I animated them, not because I actually know what they mean, right? And so like, let's just kind of get over that. We can recognize that, like right away there. We can recognize that some of this in the timeline is going to be useful for us just by looking at the peaks that are in that sound, okay? So think back to when you were in elementary school learning about syllables. So did anybody learn a creative way to count your syllables? Fingers? Well, how do you know what a syllable is, though? Just, yeah. What were you saying?
My first grade teacher said anytime you're drawing rocks, it's like that's practically.
That's how I learned it too. Like I learned if you put your hand right on your chin and say the word, every time you feel your chin push your hand down, that's a syllable, right? The interesting thing about that is also when most of that noise gets let out, right? Most of the noise that comes from our voice is just our jaw dropping and letting that air sort of flow across our vocal cords, right? So if we just open our mouth and go, right, that's most of talking. Our jaw moving up and down sort of stops that. So we can sort of change that just by moving our jaw up and down, or how much air we're pushing over our vocal cords, right? So that's why we believe the Muppets. When we're flapping, like I had to do the sock puppet thing. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I guess. I know. It's like, this is kind of nice. Could we just keep this in here? So, Rachel's getting a sunburn on the side of her face. So there's different levels of our mouth is not the thing that makes all of the noise, right? So a lot of that noise is just coming from the air passing over our vocal cords and our jaw moving up and down and sort of controlling how that air comes out, right? But there's a big portion of that after that that is controlled by the shape of our lips, right? So for example, lips, right? Try saying that without touching your lips together, right? If you can't move your lips, it's really hard to say, to make all sorts of different sounds, like the ooh sound, the buh sound, right? All of that's coming from your lips, right? And no matter how much I can control my vocal cords, I can't make that buh sound just by I can't change that to get that buh sound, right? That comes from my mouth. There's a couple of sounds that come from inside of your mouth, the T shapes, right? Or the T sounds, right? So there, title, thing, all of those require you to move your tongue a little bit to get that sound, right? In fact, and a lot of those are T words, like title, but you notice with title, I just touch the tip of my tongue to the roof of my mouth. The word thing, I pretty much stick my tongue all the way out, right? I kind of bite my tongue, thing. And so your tongue is sort of that next layer inside of your mouth that's kind of controlling some of those sounds. So this first method in which we're going to animate, I'm going to break it apart into those three sections. I'm going to do jaw first and get that jaw flapping up and down. And sort of control that in the same way that we did with the puppets, with like the Muppet sounds, right? And you're going to see that just by adding that up and down motion, I'm going to make this relatively believable that this character has those noises coming out. From there, I can layer in the lips to get that more like fine control of those sounds. And then after that, I can add in the tongue to get those little bitty flicky sounds that we maybe didn't, we weren't able to get in other ways. Interestingly, I have worked on characters before that didn't have tongues, or at least they didn't have them rigged, right? And you can still get a lot of that just from the way the character uses his mouth and teeth, or her mouth and teeth. So for example, if you're needing that t sound, sometimes just putting the teeth together like that, you can get a similar shape, right? So for the first half of this animation, he says,
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
that's what I'm going to focus on. So I'm actually going to sort of scale my timeline to there.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
So I'm just going to animate the jaw moving up and down, just setting keyframes on the jaw control to get that to happen. Now, how many of you are using Malcolm for this rig, or for this animation? Anybody? Okay. Have you used him before?
Yeah.
Okay, so you already know about the picker?
Yeah.
Okay. Since nobody else is using Malcolm, I'm not going to go through setting up the anim picker for that. If you change your mind and decide to use Malcolm, of the two videos I upload, I go through the process of setting up the anim picker in that. For now, just know that the way you use this rig is you have to install this extra little script, and it will open up this viewable picker here, right? So we got these different tabs where I can turn on and off his controls. I can select all of his controls, but I also have a Malcolm face control here, right? And I'm going to use this to select portions of his face to animate. Now, before I start animating, there's one more thing I want to set up, and that's, I want to deal with this very problematic issue of he keeps moving his head around, right? If I go to frame 1, right, I can tumble around here and can zoom in really close and see like his face, and I can start posing on that, but as soon as I move my timeline, he's going to move out of my screen again, right? And that's very frustrating. I want to not have to keep moving my camera just to look at the pose. I usually do two different cameras. I do one that is looking straight at the face at all time, and then I have my final render camera, right? And that allows me to do two things. It allows me to kind of see if I'm making the pose cleanly without sort of breaking the rig, but it also allows me to angle the shot, or angle the pose to the shot itself. So let's go back to frame 0, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a new camera. I'm going to move this off to the side. I'm going to create a new camera that's looking about like this, right? So I'm going to go create, camera, and you'll see it's right here. I'm going to name this face cam, right? And then I'm going to group that. I'm going to group it so I can actually move the camera still yet, but still be able to constrain it to some things. So if I grab face cam and hit Control G, now that's in a group. And so I can call that face cam group. Okay, so what we're doing here now is I'm going to constrain this group to the character's head control. Okay, so I think this is the head control right there. So I select it first, I hold Control and select the face cam group, and then I go to, under the animation tab, constrain, and then parent. Okay, so this is really cool. Now I can, no matter what I do with my timeline, so I have to go to panels and set this to face cam. Ah, man. So now no matter what I do with my timeline, my camera is always going to stay stuck on his face. Right? Oh, for those of you who just came in, there's people in here with cameras filming stuff. The other thing is this projector stopped working today, on the day that we're filming stuff. So I'm actually using the WebEx to broadcast from this. Let's see if it'll turn back on for a few minutes. But I'm just doing a Lipsync walkthrough on this. So the WebEx link is up under the Greg folder on ETSU E3, and the faculty folder, Greg. And so you can open that up and kind of follow through, or follow along. So, all right. So I have this camera now that's always going to stay focused in on my character, but I can also sort of move it locally. Like if I want to zoom in and get really close to the mouth, it's still always going to stay close to it, right? So 100. And so now what I have is, this is sort of my two setups to be able to get these animations I need out of it, or these poses I need out of it. Okay. So, for this first pass, I'm just going to grab the jaw, right? And I'm going to animate the jaw sort of popping up and down in the same way that you did your sock puppet. I can just do it in slow motion now, right? I can do it like incrementally. So, yes?
I'm so sorry. What was the constraint to the face group? Was it the group or the camera?
I selected the head control and then constrained the face cam group to the head control. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it, again, I know today's a weird setup. Feel free to stop me at any point that you need to ask questions. The screen's done. That's cool. So, for probably about 3 minutes. So, this face cam, some rigs actually already have it set up for you. So you can check your cameras in there and make sure. But I always make one. This is actually really a cool tool that you can use for a lot of stuff. Let's say you're doing really intricate hand poses. You can do a hand camera as well, like where you can just constrain that to the wrist. And you can always kind of tumble around the hand and look at that from any pose. So we have this set up now where we can see. We don't have a ton of screen real estate here, so I'm going to kind of be moving this thing around as we go. We can see my picker, where I can grab his jaw control, and we can kind of see how this works with the face. So there's two different options. I can just grab the jaw. I can grab all of these sections in here. That's the whole mouth. Or if I click this bottom section here, I pretty much grab the entire bottom half of his face, including the jaw. So again, you don't have to worry about this. Your own character probably has a different face setup, and you can sort of figure out which way is going to be the best way to pick that. It may require you to kind of tinker, set a few keyframes and see how that's working, and then delete those and figure it out. So for this first pass, I'm just going to animate his jaw moving up and down. And we had that syllable thing we were talking about earlier, but you can also kind of see the points at where my jaw is really going to dip, just based off of the audio that's coming out of his mouth, right? On this waveform that goes along the bottom, whenever that peaks, like in most cases, that peaks because more air is coming out, more noise is coming out. And usually that means your jaw is dropping. It's not always the case, but you can kind of use that as an indicator on your timeline, right? So right there, I'll go ahead and grab his jaw. And I'm using the rotate to open this. Now, we had this conversation in a previous class. You can use the translate too, but recognize the reason your jaw opens is because it's hooked to your skull right here, like there's a hinge right there. And so that means your chin, when you're talking, is actually moving in a very subtle arc, right? If you move it in translating, if you're translating it up and down, you're not going to get that arc, right? So it was good while it lasted. So we're going to use that rotation to get those subtle arcs in the jaw, right? So just to open it there. So I think that's the right amount of open, but I think that it was already open that much, so I'm going to close it a little bit first. So we're going to go to the beginning here. Let's get this. And then there it's K. It's a little bit of a louder noise, so I'm going to open this jaw a little bit more. So K. So I needed to close in between there, probably right here. And so you see all I'm really doing is this. So we're kind of looking for areas to drop that chin to, in the same way we were doing with the sock puppet. So yeah, I had a reason for doing that. So if his mouth is already open and it goes like, so right now he says, so K-I, right? You have to choose, are you going to kind of hold it level or are you going to close it just a little bit before you open it up for that I noise? So I'm just going to go ahead and open it a little bit bigger. That. And then I'm going to see what it needs in between there. So I think it needs to close just a little bit. So you listen, I. So he's kind of closing it at the end of that. I. So this is one that's kind of a little confusing. He says, I know how to ride a bike. Now, when we say I or A or whatever, like we're opening our entire mouth, right? Think about this again, like when his jaw is dropping. So even though the corners of his mouth, even he's going ooh, oh, like that, his jaw still drops in that, right? So that's still what we're listening for, is that jaw drop. So.
Yeah, I know how to
Okay. I know how to ride a bike. So keep in mind that he's closing his lips there, bike. But his jaw may not be all the way closed, and the jaw is probably going to start to open while his lips are still sealed together. So this shape is not probably going to be completely sealed, but I'm just going to close his mouth pretty tight to get close. Okay. Now, some of you maybe may have noticed that when I'm scrubbing my timeline, both of my screens are updating, or both of my viewports are updating. That's something you have to turn on. So if you go to your settings and preferences here, under time slider, where it says update view instead of active, set it to all. And that way when I'm scrubbing my timeline, I can see it updating in both screens. So let's watch this. This is just the jaw moving.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
So, is that playing a little choppy on yours? Or can you see it all right? A little choppy? All right, sorry about that. Hopefully in the video, like, it'll be a little smoother. Let me go ahead and try turning this back on and see if we get anything. I think I'm wondering if it's the bulb, like the bulb having to like cool down or something. So again, like it's not completely convincing in that full lip sync sort of way, but it is convincing in that Muppet sort of way, right? Like if we look at all of this.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I
Particularly
know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
Yeah. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. So that's a good time to sort of narrow this down a little bit, right? We understand what this guy is saying because we've been listening to words all of our life. We've been listening to spoken language all of our life. So have you ever listened to someone speak a language you don't know, and it's going so fast, and it all sounds like how does that go together? And you're like, how is somebody understanding that, right? And that's a lot of what's going on here too. I want you to recognize that if we were to write out what this says in the script, we're going to get two different things, right? Or if we write out what this says in the script, he's saying, it's okay, I know how to ride a bike, right? That is not the noises that come out of his mouth, right? He says, but the noises we hear are soak a, I know wow, derida, bite. Right? And he like really stretches out that I, right? So if you do the lip sync for I know how to ride a bike, that is not going to match up with the noises we're hearing, right? So this second line, it's okay, I'm not gonna try it again. That second line is what we're animating to. Eventually you get the ability to like sort of listen to this abstractly where you're not thinking about the words, you're just listening to the sounds and getting the poses in there for those sounds. It's a good exercise early on to write this out and make sure that you're not animating sounds that are not there, right? And the ones I think that are really specific there is he starts out with the T sound. He doesn't start off with the I. He doesn't say it's okay. He says it's okay, right? Soak. So that means the first noise we're going to see him in is sort of this TS shape. So this is a really important step for me in terms of reference. I always write it, well, at least when I have time, I write out the exact words, I write out the sounds that come out, and then on top of that, I write out what the character actually means, right? So for example of this, let's say all of your friends are leaving the dorm or leaving your apartment, wherever, and they've been driving you nuts. Like they're just annoying, and you're like, I wish you'd get out of my hair so I could get this animation done, whatever. And you're like, oh yeah, no, it's all right, y'all go on without me, right? Like that means like, please leave, I'm busy, just get out of my hair, right? That is the subtext of what that line is. Versus all of your friends are going to go watch Infinity War, and you can't go because you have a paper to write, and you really wish you had written that paper earlier, and you're like, it's all right, y'all go on without me, I'll be all right. Like, that is two different subtexts, and the acting for that is going to be two different ways. So it's a good practice. Write out the actual words that are being said, write out the sounds you hear, and then write out the subtext for that line. Because that subtext for that line is often going to drive what's going on with your upper face, right? Because you can tell when somebody's like not meaning the things that are coming out of their mouth, a lot of times by their brows, right? So this is I keep pointing at this empty screen. This is a good method to use for that. So that writing out the phonetic version of this is going to help us sort of find those lip shapes that we need to get that. Okay, so using the anim picker again, I'm going to select the entire lips, so not the entire lower half of the face, this middle section here in the middle. So it's this, for me, it's this green dot right here. That's just selecting the lip controls, not the jaw controls. And that means I can animate those on top of the jaw, and I can just sort of change what's going on with the lips while the jaw is already moving up and down. Now, before you do that, it's probably a good idea to make a sort of a curve pass on the jaw. Like, we go to this animation version here. Go to your rotate X, find these curves, and sort of polish those in there and get the shape that you want. I think mine's pretty close, so I'm not going to worry about that too much right now, but I may have to adjust the jaw as I go. So let's go ahead and grab the lips and watch it one more time.
Okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay,
Okay. So he goes, okay, right? So I'm apparently just in elementary school today. Like all of the jaw dropping to find the syllables. There was a thing that like was sort of circulating when I was like in third or fourth grade, third or fourth, which was alligator food. Anybody remember? Did anybody else have alligator food? Yeah. So if you want to see this, like if you look at another person and mouth the word alligator food without making any noise. See it? And be like, not me? No, I said alligator food. Like, it looks like you're saying, I love you, right? So the noises that are coming out of there, recognize that those are coming from your lips, and those can be multiple things. Like, there's only 5 or 6 lip shapes that overall your mouth is going to hit, right? So, so we can kind of hit all of those big parts now that we've already got the jaw taken care of, right? So let's go ahead and try that. So this is that TS sound right here. I'm going to grab the mouth and go ahead and start posing this. Now, a couple of controls you'll find. The corner of the mouth has some stuff hidden on it. We got this pucker control. It's going to allow me to kind of pucker his lips out. It's also got this corner pinch thing going on here, which will allow me to sort of seal the corners of his lips. So I'm going to keep that unsealed, but I'm going to sort of do the opposite of pucker. So kind of pull that in and pull this up a little bit. So I feel like his jaw needs to be a little bit more closed right there. So I'm going to tweak that, right? And that way I can move this. And we can get that S shape, right? So now I'm saying. So there's that O, right? So again, select all the lips, sort of find that. Scoot over a little bit. And then I'm going to so I'm going for something like this on that O shape. Okay. Put as much personality into this. Oh man, screwed that part up. Put as much personality into this section of it as you like. Like this is kind of your chance to get like some facial quirks going on as well, right? So we get this. And so for this, I go ahead and take out that pinch part. And that A, I want to go ahead and make his mouth a little wider. And maybe show a little bit more of his teeth here. And so that's just a really short stretch there, but we can watch that now and see that.
It's okay, I know how to write.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
So that's feeling a little bit better, right? And recognize that that's not a lot of keyframes. That's like 3 keyframes to get that, to get those poses, right? Do I need to do anything specific?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think you're in the shot because I'm behind you.
Oh, okay.
I'm just that guy hanging out. No one wants that.
So this version of lip sync, like these different stages or these different sections are going to have like, it's like you're hitting these softer shapes, but everything's layering together to get the complexity of the facial movement, right? So we go. So I'm all right with it up to there. Go ahead and set my key there. It's this no thing he's going to do. Which is probably going to be a little bit more upper lip up, lower lip up. So got that. So I can always borrow from earlier. So I already kind of have that O shape. I can start with that. Probably not going to. But that's not perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and tweak that just a little bit more. And there we go. And then after. So I'm borrowing some stuff from previous frames. Okay, so the last little bit here is that bite, okay? So this is the time to talk about like what's going on with your lips on that B, the M, the P, right? That is where your lips seal and you are controlling some of that noise with air, right? So think of mom, right? Really that's a hum that we pop open, right? Mom, right? Boo, or let's try bait, right? If you think of that word like bait, like it's like there's a pop of that air. It's like you're letting it build up in your mouth and you pop it out, right? So you need your mouth to read as being closed for that. And sometimes keyframes just have a tendency to like, it closes but immediately opens up again. So all of those shapes, MBPs, those all have to stay closed for a minimum of 2 frames for your eye to really be able to read them clearly. The F and the V shapes, and if you recognize what you're doing is kind of biting your bottom lip, those need at least 2 frames too, right? So forever, like you gotta kind of make sure that F and that V sort of stick just a little bit when you're saying it. So let's get that B in there. He's doing right. So because that's how that's working, because it's like we're letting that noise build up in our mouth and then pop it forth, that bite, that I part of that, like the loud part of that, happens after your lips are together, right? So you're letting your lips close, and then the noise comes from that popping open, right? bike. So I'm going to make sure that that key is holding for at least 2 frames. So right here, go ahead and set that keyframe. I usually can just sort of push the lips together and we get something okay there. I'll probably do it on the previous frame too. And then on this next frame, I can kind of go back something simple. Okay, so with that, if we watch now, so we can turn that screen back on.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
Is that still playing back kind of chunky?
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
streaming?
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
So I will point out that I've animated this shot twice today. Oh, now it's up on the screen. I'll let it play if it does.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. So, again, you'll get used to that sound repeating over and over and over again. It's one of the reasons animators carry headphones with them, though. Like, you should probably carry headphones with you. So this is the first way of doing lip sync. There's really one last thing that I usually focus on when I'm animating this way, and that's the tongue, right? Your tongue is doing some stuff, right? And it's not that much. Like if you listen to what he says, it's okay, I know how to ride a bike. So what we're looking for is those motions where his mouth is open, but his tongue is on the top of his, the roof of his mouth, right? So like we maybe don't even have to worry about it as much on the "it's okay" part, because his teeth are pretty much closed during that. But those are the areas where the tongue is going to flick up and down. I go through now and I sort of animate a layer of that. If you're doing a really close lip sync, your tongue is doing a lot inside of your mouth, but usually we don't have a camera in there. So like a lot of that being hid by your lips, by your jaw and all of that, and by the camera angle. So really it just has to seem like the tongue is going up and down at the right points here. In terms of Malcolm, his tongue is this control right here, this red one along the bottom. So if I click that, I'm selecting all of the tongue controls inside of his mouth. And so the ones I'm listening for is, so I maybe put something right there. Let's try that. I'm going to go ahead and maybe, putting 3 keys here. Go ahead and like right here, go ahead and move his tongue to the top of his mouth. Again, you can't really see what's going on, but you can see that I'm kind of moving the tongue up and down. I can move it closer toward the teeth, right? And so what I'm going to get now is very quick. You'll see, you can just barely see that, like right in through there, his tongue is moving a little bit. If you really want to accentuate it, you can kind of go through here and manually add a little bit extra in there, even some rotate. So, I know. So really that's the tip of your tongue, or sort of the middle of your tongue, touching a little bit further back on the roof of your mouth. No. And so right in there we need the tongue to do something. So let's see. So maybe right through here. There we go. So that should be plenty on that. And now if we watch this, It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
Okay. I know how to ride a bike. So this is method A. Oh, the screen's gone. Just in time for method B. I'll be honest, this is a method I learned a long time ago and said, nah, I'm not going to use that. I actually animate in a completely different manner. It's only been really the last 4 or 5 years that I've started even trying this again, and occasionally it works really well for me. I still have another workflow that I use more, that I think, that's just my workflow, that's the way I like it. I'm showing you both because everybody in this room is different, and everybody's going to find a different way that they like working, right? So the other method I'm going to show you requires it doesn't require, but it will be a lot easier and you'll be a lot more productive over time if we use a specific plugin, okay? So I'm going to show you where that plugin is. If we just search, this is actually the place right now, but if you search for Pose Library Maya, it's this studio tool. And what this is going to allow us to do is save poses and sort of blend in and out of those poses for different parts of the body, right? So we could save hand poses, we could save mouth poses, we could save entire body poses, right? That'll allow us to sort of blend in and out of those. So I've already downloaded this, but you can download it here. And I'll go ahead and go to the download page to kind of show you. If you look up in the ETSU E3 Greg faculty files, the folder is right there, Studio Library. Okay. If you extract that out, you're going to get this folder right here, Studio Library, right? If you take that Studio Library folder and paste it into your Documents, Maya Scripts folder, and put it right in there, then you'll have that installed on this computer. I think that will stay with you throughout the semester. I don't know, like once the semester starts over, what happens in your Documents folder. So mine's actually already there. I just now have to trigger that plugin. And to do that, you'll see on this website, I just have to paste this command in there. So what I usually do is I make a button for that. I'm going to right-click, copy. So in Maya, I can go to the script editor. It's this thing down here in the very bottom corner. There's this mail button, this Python button. If I just paste that in there, highlight it, and hit Control-Enter, it's going to bring up my studio library. Now, what you'll see on my library is that I already have a whole bunch of poses saved. This is saving these poses out as separate files. So that means for the rest of your life, whenever you're using the Malcolm rig, you have these other poses, right? This is a good tool to use so you can start building a library of like intricate hand poses, right? It'll allow you to do some really neat stuff. It doesn't mean that we're like stockpiling finished pieces. What it means is we're stockpiling better starting points, right? So if I need my character to make the S shape, I have sort of a generic S shape saved in here. I can dial that in, and then I can change it up to fit that specific pose. It really just means I'm speeding up the amount of time it takes me to pose this out. If you're animating a character on a 10-minute or a 10-second lip sync piece, you'll probably have stockpiled enough poses in the first like 2 seconds of that lip sync to help you finish the rest of that lip sync even faster. So it just means we don't have to pose as many things, right? And so what I'm actually going to do with this method of lip syncing is just the pose-to-pose method, but I'm doing it straight ahead, right? I'm just going to go forward a few frames, and when I hear a specific sound, I'm going to dial in the pose for that. Thankfully, there is actually already a whole bunch of like predefined poses for lip sync. right? And it wasn't actually made for lip sync. This is actually made for speech therapy. It's depending on who or why you're using these, they're either known as visemes or phonemes, however you want to pronounce it. So let me show you sort of the basics of this, okay? The idea behind it is that each sound you make usually sort of has a roughly similar pose on the... Did I turn this back on, or did it just come back on by itself? Oh, that's so here's an example, like the A shape. Like every time that you say A, it means your jaw is open, it means your mouth is wide, and you're letting a lot of air out, right? It doesn't mean it's the only way to make that sound. It just means that often when we're not consciously thinking about it, these are the rough shapes our mouth is going to make, right? However, this is not always like these are the exact poses you would use. For example, let's take the S shape, right? So say it with me. Say snake. So snake. So look at what the S looks like. Right? Really wide. The corners of your mouth really wide. Your teeth are together, and you're just pushing air through your teeth, right? Snake. So now let's say a different S word. Let's try soup. Soup. So that's a different shape entirely. Why is that? It's the letter that comes after it, right? And this is one of the reasons that it takes us a little while to learn to talk, right? We have a lot of trouble with this. It's like it's almost like speech is predictive, right? Like you're predicting the noises that are going to come out next, and to make it flow smoothly, we can adapt those shapes to fit that thing that's going to come after, right? So if you just look up phonemes at Phonemes, I think, you're going to find all sorts of examples of it. Actually, what I have in this folder right now is mainly just the stuff I stole off Pinterest. And so you can you can stockpile a lot of stuff like this just to get good examples of how to hit those poses, right? And you're going to see that a lot of people have been talking about these for a long time. These were, when they're called visemes, is really how we are seeing that shape. When we talk about phonemes, like pho is like as in phone, like audio. It is the shape that is used to make that noise come out of your mouth. So a speech therapist will teach kids how to make that noise more consistently. So like the R sound is one that's difficult, right, for a lot of people. And so teaching kids, no, you have to put your tongue up a little bit and make this like shape with it. So and like that's hard for them to learn. That's sort of where this comes from, right? And so we can borrow that. I will say sort of the next level of this, and we rarely get to it in the first level of this class, is that there is another type of breaking down of the face so we can understand all the facial motions. It's called the Facial Action Coding System, FACS. And I would encourage you to look into that. A lot of rigs are made with that facial action coding system. But my experience is that most of the time when it comes to talking, we're still using some variation of these phonemes, right? So let's dial some of these in. Actually, did anybody need the attendance still yet? Did I get this somebody? Okay. I think Justin needs this as well. So this is where this pose library comes in handy, right? Let's say that I decided I needed a pose from, so this S shape right here, right? Already have a couple of S's, but I like this S. I'm going to grab all of the facial controls, and that's including the jaw now, right? And I can save this as a pose in my library, right? Actually, let's go over here where I can see this a little bit better. 6, right? I can hit plus, pose, And then if I click up here, it will take a picture of my screenshot here, or of my camera, and I can say S3, right? So now I have 3 S poses. If I hit save, I have it there, right? So the whole point of this is that I can dial these in little bits at a time as I'm animating, right? So let's make this a little smaller. That's nice. So let's say as I'm going through here, let's go to the second part of this. He says,
Doing it since I was 19.
been doing it since I was 19, right? And this again, talking about he knows how to ride a bike. So that first noise is that B shape, right? So the cool thing about this pose library is I can just start dialing these poses in. If I double click on this B, it'll just put that entire face pose in that B shape. Let's say I didn't want necessarily that entire B shape. I wanted to sort of soften it a little bit, or maybe I wanted to make it a little more narrow, right? I can choose this ooh shape. It's the narrow shape. I can start blending that in there. So now he's got a little bit more of a narrow pose, but his lips aren't together. So I could grab these 2 lips, sort of push those together a little bit better. And now I have a completely different B, right? Again, if I select the entire face, I can just save this new B as a new pose, right? And we'll save this as B, I don't know if there's another, or yeah, 2, B2, right? And then save, right? So what this is allowing me to do is save out these lip sync poses, and once I have a whole bunch of them, I can start dialing in this animation really quickly. To give you an idea, like an 8-hour-a-day work, if I'm working 8 hours a day on an animation, right? A 10-second lip sync animation takes me somewhere between 3 to 4 days, and that's sort of Civ 6 style, right? Like if I can do it faster in like more cartoony styles and stuff like that. But 3 to 4 days of 8-hour days to do the lip sync takes me on average 15 to 20 minutes, right? This is super fast when you have this tool sort of set up in the way you need it. The first time through, it's not going to speed you up that much, but it really is like about halfway through that lip sync, it'll suddenly start getting faster because you'll have built up a library of poses, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dial this in, and I'll just show you the sort of the speed. So we got this ooh, add some ooh. Actually, I have a couple of oohs, so I can kind of mixing. Yeah. So he says bin, it's really quiet, so I'm going to add just a little bit of that in. I need that B to be like even more. I think those are hitting at the wrong spot. Doing. So just open his mouth there just a little bit. I like that really wide S.
spinning it inside with
So you'll notice I'm setting a keyframe about every 2 to maybe 4 frames on this. That's just because he's talking a little fast. You'll probably end up with a keyframe, say, every 2 to 5 frames. Maybe in like those quiet times you can give it a little bit more buffer time. But I'm really just straight ahead animating his lips, right? You never really want a pose to jump over a single frame, right? Unless it really needs to like pop, right? You really need to pop that mouth open fast. Then you may do it over a single frame. Most of the time, I usually give it at least 2 frames to blend. So let's go ahead and finish this one up. So he really pops on this team. Like he really pops it open right there. And he needs a little bit of a really is this. So again, I'm not going to just use the pose library. I'm going to tweak each of these poses to make them read perfectly. And so select all that. But a lot of it I can get out of the pose library. So let's watch that second half now.
Bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. Bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. Bike. I've been doing it.
And I'm going to probably keep a little bit more of that. So let's look at the whole animation now. Starting at frame 100. Try turning this thing back on again.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
Okay. I will say, I want you to recognize that I've done this twice today. And it gets better every time. There's something about it that sometimes you'll be fighting with lip sync, and like I'll just watch people fight with the same like lip sync section for a long time. Just grab those keys, wipe them out, and rekey them, and see if it doesn't get better. Like it almost always does for me. And it's like really what happens is like there's so much going on in the mouth that it gets very confusing about what's really happening there. And so this is what I'm getting.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
Okay?
It's okay, I know how.
So I want to do one more thing that's really kind of helpful for me. This is sort of my cleanup pass on lip sync. Obviously, just like anything else, you should look at each of these controls and give them attention, right? Really, only in feature film animation are you ever allotted that kind of time, right? To the point that like the corners of your mouth, you should be able to put an arc tracker on there, and they should be moving in perfect arcs, right? We rarely get that kind of polish time in either school or sometimes even in games. You just don't have that much time to dial that stuff in. I will show you the biggest offenders on the things that look stiff in lip sync and how to fix those. So the 3 things that I always look at no matter what is the jaw control. I always go in there and open up my animation editor, my graph editor here, and I look at the way this thing pops up and down, right? I look for areas to ease in or to overshoot. So for example, right here, we get this like very flat area. And just by going in there, adding a new key to this, like that's just going to help ever so slightly because your jaw is going to ease in and ease out in real life, right? Maybe down here, maybe I just pull that closed a little earlier, right? Maybe get a little overshoot there, maybe hold this back some. So really just going through here and looking for opportunities to refine this curve a little bit more, right? I can kind of predict what some of these are just because I've done this for so long, but like just giving it one good polish pass on the jaw will really make that motion feel more fluid and like make sure you don't have any like poppy, like uncomfortable looking things, right? The next thing is notice that like think about like when I say the word when, like watch what happens. I go when, right? So the corners of my mouth move inward way earlier than I start making that noise, right? In general, the corners of your mouth move before your jaw. And so a lot of times when we're animating this, we're animating the entire lips together, or the entire lower jaw together, right? And just by taking the corners of the mouth and sliding them one frame earlier, it will loosen it up a little bit. So I'm going to grab those two mouth corner controls. Okay, so this one, and I'm just going to move all of my keyframes one frame earlier. Okay, that sounds pretty drastic, but watch what happens.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
So you may not be able to tell a huge difference, but it's going to loosen up the way the mouth, because the bottom lip, all of the other lips are hitting like one frame difference, right? And just in general, the corners of your mouth are usually a little earlier than the rest of your mouth, right? The other thing I will do sometimes, depending on how the rig is structured, is sometimes I will offset the bottom lip, because you can slide your bottom lip up and down. I will offset it a frame later. Now that often messes up your B's, M's, and P's, right? So I will usually give it a try, and if it messes everything up, I'll undo it. And if it doesn't mess everything up, I'll keep it. So let's just try it one frame later, see what we get. If it messes it up, then what I'll do is I'll go through there and I'll manually move it in spots where I need it.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. Bike.
Yeah, I think it kind of messing it up just a little bit on this section right here. So maybe I'll just do it in certain areas. But you can also do the same thing with the Translate X here that I was doing with the jaw, which is just to go in here and like put some drag in here, right? Like have it like overshoot a little bit, right? Just a little bit of this to give us some more interesting motion, right? So just a little bit of that is going to go a long way. And then when I hit this again.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
Okay. So this last little bit here, again, I know this is a long, like, hard to watch lecture. It's not full of super exciting stuff, but I do think that there's a lot of important information here. In fact, I'm trying to cram what is often in like the online workshops an entire like 12-week class into one day. So again, you may go back and just sort of skim through this video later. I always break the face up into the top part of the face and the lower part of the face, right? And we're pretty much done with the lower part of the face. We can add some more like expression in there. Like I didn't really push the expressions to be super exaggerated. We could add some of that, but really that's done. The upper part of the face isn't doing anything. In fact, his eyes aren't even moving, right? So I want to talk about those elements. So we have his eyebrows, first off, right? And so I want you to try something. I want you to like, just smile, like with your mouth, right? Now, recognize that your eyebrows do something naturally when you are really smiling. And then so they just kind of go up just a little bit, right? They kind of like your center of your eyebrows, when somebody makes you laugh, the center of your eyebrows kind of go up just a little bit, right? So try smiling, but pushing your eyebrows down. Like, so you start feeling like a Marvel villain, right? Recognize that it's most of what we get in terms of emotion is actually just that division between the top part of the face and the lower part of the face, right? If I push the center of my eyebrows upward, it kind of has that like sad puppy dog, like, oh, I like spilled my ice cream, like feel to it, right? Unless I'm grimacing, right? And then it's like, I'm embarrassed, I don't really want to be here right now. Or, like, it's that combination between the upper and the lower part of your face that gets us a really diverse amount of facial expressions, right? So we can kind of shift all of that around, but it really is a combination of what your mouth is doing. Happy is not just your mouth, the corners of your mouth going up for a smile, right? You can smile with your mouth and do half a dozen different things with your eyebrows that drastically change that expression, right? This is a great book for those of you who have never read it, is Understanding Comics. And he really goes through sort of how we can mix these different parts of the face and these different parts of the, or different emotions to get a real big range of emotions, right? So I'm going to just do a pass on the eyebrows right now. The thing about your eyebrows, though, is they don't move that much. Like, next time you're having a conversation with somebody, you'll recognize that eyebrows mainly move when there's a change in, like, emotion or, like, a thought, I guess, or a reaction of some sort. But they're not constantly just sort of sliding up and down on people's faces, right? They kind of hit a pose and hold that for a stretch and then hit another pose and then hold that for a stretch. So really for this, I'm just going to pick like 3 different poses, right? And I'm going to just sort of pose those out and do some quick transitions in between them. So go back to classic here. With my picker, I can use this, I think it's this eyebrow button right here that will select them both. Again, you're going to want to pose your eyebrows as a whole unit. Remember when we were talking about line of action? You could draw that line all the way through the eyebrows. So you never really want an eyebrow pose that looks like this, right? You always want them to kind of feel like you could draw a line through them in some way. So he says, as if we couldn't remember.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
So I want that beginning part to almost sound like he's bragging, right? Like, it's okay, I know how to ride a bike, right? And so you probably will get some of this from your own video reference, because you're going to unintentionally do this, you're going to naturally do this. So like if he's bragging, maybe his eyebrows are going to be up and like the center is going to be up, like, look at me, I can ride a bike. Right? So I'm going to kind of start him off somewhere a little more neutral, right? Go ahead and keep my keyframe there. I'm going to hit the "it's okay" part like right about there. Right? So I'm going to put my next eyebrow pose there. Maybe push these up just a little bit. Push them in just a little bit so they're not too sad looking, right? There we go. So yeah, it's okay. I know how to ride a bike.
I know how to ride a bike. Yeah.
So when he says bike, I'm going to try to push them all like the entire eyebrow up a little bit. So maybe something like this. Like he's really being expressive, right? And then like, almost like in this like lectury way, or like bright, I've been doing it since I was 19. Like push them down at that end, like it's a little boastful and like he's trying to convey facts to you, right? Like, so again, this is all performance issues. Like you can decide what it is you want your character, how you want your character to perform.
Doing this inside was
So I don't want the middles going down too much. Or maybe I want them down a little bit, but I want the side up a little bit, right? And then maybe push them inward just a little bit just to soften that and make it look a little more curious, right?
not
And then for this very last pose, I'll go ahead and push them back up a little bit. So most of this is just going to be me doing quick transitions in between those poses. Because right now they just kind of drift to that. I'm just going to borrow some of the poses before here, middle click, sort of drag it out there. Let these transitions happen over about 3 to 5 frames, right? So it's going to get...
I know how to write. How to write.
Yep.
Okay, you middle clicked and drag. I would know that. Is that like copying the frame, kind of?
Kind of. So, like, copying a frame means there has to be a frame there first. So, what's right, if I just click and drag,
I know how to write.
the timeline updates, right? If I go to frame 20 and I middle click and drag from frame 20, the timeline doesn't update. And so basically, those controls are still in the location they were on frame 20. So if I get out here to 142 and hit S, it sets a keyframe on them from where they were on frame 120, right? So it's kind of like I can borrow from frame 120 instead of a keyframe. So keep in mind, you can do like anticipations, you can do overshoots in this as well. So like, for example, he does this like quick eyebrow up thing here in just a second. So what I'm going to have is like this keyframe, and then he's going to pop down a little bit, like anticipate down, before he pops up into this.
Okay.
So we'll see what we're getting now.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay,
So again, I'm going to kind of keep it here till about maybe here.
I was 9.
So we get,
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
now, this is just my first pass on that. Like, again, I'll be honest, I did not put as much thought into this one as I would, at least for the eyebrow stuff, as I would for an actual shot. Now I'll probably be doing a lot more pulling from reference, but this is just to kind of show you how those eyebrow shifts can happen. It's also to show you like how quickly you can change this. If you go back and look at the previous version, like I did something completely different and got a slightly different result. Right? My next phase is the eyes, and I do the eyes in 2 different passes. I'm going to do eye movements, so I'm going to aim my eyes around. I'm going to do the eye darts on that. And then I'm going to do eye blinks, because eye blinks are sometimes responses to eye movements, right? If I go from looking over here on this side of the room to looking over here on this side of the room, I almost involuntarily blink. Part of that reason is sort of evolutionary, and so I don't turn and like gouge my eye out or like a low-hanging branch, like you close your eyes to kind of protect them. The other is because if you're just spinning around with your eyes open, it's very disorienting, and you get dizzy. So in that quick motion, if you blink, it's kind of like you're shutting out the world while you're changing and refocusing, right? And so I'm going to do that as 2 passes. I'm going to do the eye darts. I'm going to have my character kind of look around. Eye darts happen over about 2 frames. So you get these really quick like shifts as you're changing your focus. Again, we become very, I don't know, like, it's typically stare at people the longer you animate. So next time you're talking to somebody, having a conversation, watch their eyes. They'll dart back and forth between your mouth and up to your eyes and up to your forehead and then like just all over the place. So like their eyes are, and it's not even voluntary, right? It's like maybe a twitch in your eyebrow causes their eyes to sort of flick up and lift your eyebrows and then back down at your mouth, right? Maybe they heard something off to the side and their eyes kind of dart over and back really quick. Our eyes are constantly moving. So they never do this slow pan across. They always do these quick like twitches across. And most of the time those twitches happen over about 2 to 3 frames. So I'm going to go ahead and do a pass really quick on getting his eyes sort of posed out, right? This control right here will grab them. And so I want him to kind of like start looking away, maybe like down like this. And then like when he says, it's okay, I can kind of like looks, I want him to have him like kind of look at the camera. So maybe like right here, maybe have him look up at the person here, right? So that means like, I kind of liked it when he was looking down still yet, like he's thinking. And so we get, and then maybe have him kind of look off to the side here like he's remembering by the end of it. No, by the end of it I want him kind of looking back at us, or I don't know. Maybe that's not bad. Let's try that. But,
I know how to ride a bike.
so I think when he throws his head up like that, I'm going to have him kind of roll his eyes a little bit. Like, you know, maybe even dip them a little bit more like this.
I know how to ride a bike.
Then kind of have them come back down to look at us. This. All right.
Yeah, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
So when he says, I've been doing it since I was 19, there's a really, let me look this up really quick, off screen. So I've been meaning to sort of show you this in the past. Yeah, here we go. So the direction your eyes are looking have something to do with like your memory. Oh, you can't see that. So you're hopefully seeing it on your screen. And so like this is just an idea of what that means. But usually if you think about something, when somebody's thinking about the past, they kind of like look off to the side, right? And in this example, if he's trying to remember something like auditory or visual, then they're going to look off to their left, right? And so his isn't really visual, it isn't really auditory, it's riding a bike, but it's a memory. So I'm just going to have him kind of look off to his left, kind of going with this auditory here. And so that's what I'm kind of, so I've been doing it since I was, so maybe something like this. And then when he realizes what it is, I'll have him kind of look back at you. And honestly, I'm probably going to change this animation a little bit because I feel like he turns his head away from you just a little too much. But you get the idea.
I was 19.
Okay. And so now we got all this eye movement, but it's still kind of floating.
Okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing.
So now I just need that eye motion to happen really quickly, right? So I'm going to keep it down here, but like maybe I'll borrow this keyframe and do a quick twitch up to where it is here over about 2 frames, right? And so you'll see like this little dart that it does right there, right? That's what we're looking for.
I know how to
bit more detail in here.
Doing it.
So that's close enough. Let's see what we get.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19.
So, so the last little step I'm going to do in here is putting in blinks. Blinks just require you to think a little bit about what's going on in the character's head. So there's a couple of times when we blink. You know, we blink when we're trying to avoid getting our eyes gouged out. We blink when we're thinking a lot. And then, like, if there's not another reason, we often just blink because our eyes get dry. A lot of people will tell you, especially a lot of older people, will tell you, like, don't use a computer, you're going to ruin your eyes. And they're actually right. Because what actually happens is we stare at the computer, we don't blink as often. But when we're moving around, we blink a lot just to keep our eyes lubricated. And so it's a good idea to blink. Everybody blink a few times just to keep your eyes healthy. There we go. But we can, if we have like a long dead spot of time where your character hasn't blinked, sometimes you just want to throw one in there. You don't want to throw a blink in during a tense moment, right? Like if your character's really trying to convince somebody of something, if they're blinking a lot while they're saying that, they're going to feel like they're lying, right? It feels like that there's something else going on in their brain, right? Kind of draws your attention away from whatever their focus is supposed to be and makes you think it's something else, right? So just looking for places to put in those blinks is sort of something that you may be able to pull that from your reference. You may actually find that just sort of organically as you're working, right? So for me, he's got a couple of big head movements. So I'm going to grab these two eye controls. I want he kind of does this like look up to here, and so maybe I'll do one right there, or maybe I'll do one like right before that. So a way of blink works, keyframe on the open, over about 2 frames, the eyes will go shut, okay? You don't close the top lid all the way. It's like the top lid goes most of the way down, the bottom lid kind of comes up to meet them, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to have those lids closed for a minimum of 2 frames, okay? And then over the period of the next 3 frames, they're going to blend back open again, right? So it's 2 to get closed, it's going to stay closed for 2, and it's going to open up over 3. You can kind of ease into this third one if you wanted to, but that's kind of how much detail you want to do. So recognize that sometimes you're going to have to change the lid shapes a little bit as well, just to get the eyes, where the eyes move, like you may want to like make the character look like he's like stressing a little bit by like pushing that top lid closed. Generally, your top lid kind of hovers around your iris as well. Is it your iris? What's the colored part around your eye, not the black part? It's the iris. That's what I thought. Yeah, I always get this confused. So usually your top lid just kind of kisses that. If it's much higher than that, your character often looks surprised. So you can kind of play around with that a little bit as well if you want to sort of push those top lids down a little bit. They're going to feel a little bit more casual then, right?
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay, I know how to ride a bike.
So I'm going to do another like blink as the character throws his head up from here to here. So I can highlight these keyframes, right click, copy, and then over here, right click, paste. Oh, wow, that's way off. Oh, it's because I didn't paste them on that one, too. Sorry about that. Let's see.
I,
Copy. Paste.
doing this inside was 19.
And so I may even consider doing another one like right here before this little head gesture.
19.
Oh, yeah. So now I got 3 blinks in there. Let's see how that looks.
It's okay, I know how to ride a bike. I've been doing it since I was 19. It's okay.
Oh, I forgot something. I'm sorry. On the eyebrows, I remember how we did the lead and follow on the mouth. Like I said, grab the corners of the mouth. Those usually go first. Those 2 center controls in the eyebrows, I often usually set those like a frame earlier as well. So I'm going to go ahead and grab those, do that, and then, in all honesty, that's most of it, right? That's most of what I do in terms of lip sync. So file, save scene as, I'll save this one as, so I know that was a lot of stuff. Like I just bombarded a whole bunch of boring stuff right at you, right? That's really just how this is. I had this conversation earlier with the first class. Animation isn't, it's not like a history class, right? Like if you're majoring in history and you take like Byzantine history and like Russian history and whatever, it's like every class is an entire new textbook full of information thrown at your face. That's not really how animation is, right? Like, I taught you most of what I knew in the first animation class you ever took with me, right? I taught you about the 12 principles, I taught you about arcs, I taught you about all those things. And then you come into this class and you start animating characters, and I teach you about the 12 principles, and I teach you about arcs, and I teach you about posing. And if you take the class again, I'll teach you about the 12 principles, and I'll teach you about arcs, and I'll teach you about posing. The problem with it is the first time I taught you all this stuff, the first time I gave these lectures, you absorbed like a very small amount of it, right? It was all new, you came to it, I was like throwing all this information out, you pick up bits and pieces. If you were to go back and sit in on animation fundamentals right now, you would hear stuff that you totally missed or totally heard with a different set of ears the first time through. So recognize, like, that's one of the reasons I wanted to record this today. It's not super exciting to watch somebody lip sync a shot. Like, that's just not a super exciting process. But I just threw a lot of information at you, whether you recognize that or not. So I want you to have these videos to go back to, because after you animate them, after you animate your shot, I want you to consider going back and watching this video again, because a lot of the stuff I said today is going to make a lot more sense, right? As I said, like, a lot of times, like, you just have to wipe it out and try again. And that may be the case with lip sync. You may lip sync your shot 2 or 3 times before you get one that you're really happy with. And again, like, I'm happier with this version than the one I did in the first class. I've had plenty of times that I've done that professionally. I'll work for a few hours and be like, I'm not happy with this. I wipe it out. I'm just happier with it the second time. I don't know what that is or why that happens that way, but it just does. So either way, I am done talking now. I'm going to stop saying words because I've gone through this twice. If you have questions about this, like, ask, but recognize that that was pretty much my last lecture. Right? This is, from here on out, mainly work time. We're going to have a couple of days where we're going to be doing some in-class critiques, or in-class, like, check-in points. But I wanted to get this in today just so you have that to start animating the lips and hopefully be able to take this all the way to the final piece. So, otherwise, the rest of the class is yours. If you have any questions, wave me down. I'll help you with any technical stuff. And I'm going to upload these videos here in just a second. I recently uploaded some other videos, and I posted those on Band. So for the Project 2, the game project, I recorded each of you a video, or recorded a video that had some feedback for everybody who's turned something in. I don't have the feedback for, and I think I've updated the grades for that and all of the exercises as well. I don't have the grades for project 3 yet. That is the next thing on my to-do list. I'm burning through my principals classes right now, getting their grades in, and then I'm going to hit your project 3 and get you a video for that as well. It's actually proving, even though it takes a while and it takes a dedicated chunk of time to do it, I'm actually able to get you, I think, more robust feedback with that. Has anybody watched those yet? Okay, is it helpful? Yeah. Like, if at any point you need that for something else, or you're like, hey, would you just like, let me give you my Maya file and you can work through it. I am more than happy to do that. Right? It's something I used to do a lot. I'm trying to get back into a grading workflow that'll allow me to do that. But it does take, like I said, there's probably about 2.5 hours of videos that I recorded just for that one project between this class and the other class. So it takes me a little bit of time to be able to actually make those, but hopefully they're helpful. All right, cool. I'm going to go ahead. Is this a question that should go on the video, or is this a standalone question? Standalone. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now. I'll upload that here in just a few minutes, and there should be, I'll post the links for both of them, so you can watch either this one or the other classes' videos. They're very similar, not exactly the same. So, all right, I'll hit